Good morning, everyone. This morning, I am speaking with Jesse Anderson, and Jesse's going to introduce himself and tell us a little bit about him. And we're going to talk about some interesting things when it comes to hiring technology people, and specifically about DBAs and data science. So, Jesse, take it away. Just who are you? Your company? What do you do?
Hi, thank you so much for having me. My name is Jesse Anderson. I'm the managing director at Big Data Institute. We mentor companies all over the world on big data, but not just from a technical point of view, but also from the organizational point of view that we're about to talk about. What should the team be like? To that end, I've done pretty extensive research on the subject. I've written 3 books. My latest book is called Data Teams, and I'd highly suggest everyone read it because I talk about some of the things in more depth that we'll be talking about today.
Okay, great. I appreciate that. We'll talk about some of those books in a bit here. All right. So, one of the topics that got us together in the first part, or in the first place, was what has happened to the DBA? Database administrator used to be a very hot role, lots of companies hiring for them. And we just don't see that as much anymore. You still see it out there on the jobs, but it's a small percentage of jobs compared to how it used to be. What's going on with that, and what 2 cents do you have to provide about what's happened to the DBA and what's or where's that role going to now?
So it's interesting that was happening because when I looked at that, and you and I were probably on the same sort of emails and news programs or news articles. They were saying DBA, the new job for the 20th century or the 21st century, and I was thinking, no, that is not the one. And in fact, I spoke at a college class of people who were going to graduate as DBAs, and it said, is it too late? Could you change? Like, being really the bearer of bad
Oh my
news.
gosh,
But
I
that
spent all this
was,
money on tuition.
yes. Yeah. So it was kind of sad to have to stand up there and say that because it hadn't happened yet. There wasn't this thing that somebody could point to and say, oh, yes, this is what's happening. And so it was a different sort of thing that it was me saying, no, I see what's happening in the field. So here's let me break down what's happening, or what happened is part of the reason we needed so many DBAs is we were beating the hell out of our databases. And we were beating our databases down because we didn't have other systems to do the analytics we needed. So we had this database and we would use it for everything instead of saying, well, the database does this thing really well, but we need this other technology, whether that's Spark, whether that's Hadoop or whatever, to do other parts. And so once we took the load off our production databases and put them onto these other systems, we didn't need a 10, 20 person DBA team. We had other people, we had other technologies we could use. So this was a key change that I don't think most people saw at that time.
Okay, that's interesting. So, what tools are being used right now? Is it just being shot off to the data engineers, the data scientists? Where's that being done?
A lot of times it's the actual engineering work is being offloaded onto the data engineering team. So where it was data was that simple purview, or everything data was in the purview of the database engineers, the database administrators, we've now shifted that, and some data is the responsibility of our data engineers and data engineering team. And so a lot of the actual responsibility for the infrastructure falls on the data engineering team. But now that responsibility for the actual analytics, that still falls to our business intelligence team, our data scientists. But now they have better tools to be able to decide, I want to run the analytic here versus over here.
Okay, and how do you feel about like software developers sticking their hands in the database? Good thing, bad thing? Are they better at it than they used to be?
So that's an
Not going to
interesting
get you in trouble
problem.
with that.
Oh no, I've actually talked about this because software engineers, if you're having them run a production database, you're going to have all sorts of problems. This is not who they are. Conversely, if you're going to have DBAs magically be changed into data engineers. So just for clarity, my definition of a data engineer is a software engineer who has specialized their skills in big data. So from that definition, if you magically take your DBAs or even data warehouse engineers and say, I dubbed the data engineer, it doesn't magically change their skill set, doesn't change their abilities. you've just created a different problem. You shifted the problem. So, and to answer your question, it is very imperative that your data engineers be software engineers, in my opinion.
Very good answer. So, if you were to go into one of those college classrooms today where they're teaching people something, what would you say to them about what jobs to focus on for the next 10 years?
I think the job to focus on the next 10 years is enabling data, and to enable data the right way. Where if one of the issues we have with sort of DBA was that a significant limitation of skills. Skill was only around SQL. If it could be expressed in SQL, they could do it. However, for the more advanced types of data, we're going to need people who can program. So it's people who can program, who can also do SQL, but even more importantly, understand business. They understand the business problem. So if we have somebody who can understand all three parts of that, maybe they're a data engineer and they understand that in a cursory way, still so much better off than somebody who only understands the code. So I think it's really key is saying, yes, we will specialize, but cross train as much as you can. You'll be so much better off.
Okay, understood. So, one of the things I always like to talk about is just the current market. You're hiring lots of data oriented people, data scientists, data engineers. How's the market changed for finding people these days compared to pre pandemic levels?
Pre-pandemic, it was difficult to hire people because there weren't very many. Post-pandemic, current pandemic, it's even more difficult to hire people. There's even higher demand. And what's happened is the companies that are hiring for engineers, for data scientists, they're seeing even more importance of data. So the pandemic has put even more emphasis on data. And because of that, they're hiring even more people of data. And there weren't enough people to go around before, and now there's even fewer people to go around. That said, we still have a glut of people who don't know what they're talking about, quite frankly. We still have a lot of data scientists, a lot of data engineers who've just changed a title and haven't learned. So my advice to them is buckle down, learn your skills, understand this stuff, and you can get a job. But don't just try to lie your way or fudge your way through an interview. It's not good for either side.
Yeah, understood. Have you done anything, or what tips do you use, or what things do you do to try and find some people to join your company? Y- yeah, have you found anything that works for you? That any secrets that other companies could take and use to try and find some technical people?
It's using your network. Do you have a good reputation? Are you out there talking about this? So in our case, I've spoken pretty extensively about this. I know a lot of people. Some of my former students. I know them, and I saw what they did during that class, and I'm able to say, oh, I would actually hire that person again. So I saw how they learned. I saw how hard they worked. So I think that was key. So having a good presence out there in the community, having a good name out there in the community. One thing I have put forward to companies and said, you can hire people with the makings of some of these things, but you will need to give them the tools. And so you may want to become known as the company that will hire and actually give the resources for them to become full-fledged data engineers, for example.
Okay. And you mentioned the book Data Teams. What can you give us a premise of the book, and who should read that?
Sure. The most of the books in data have all been management focused, or excuse me, not management focused. They've been, here's about this technology and here's how you run this technology. And what I saw was this need for a book that said, here is how you run the teams. And that was the book I wrote. I wrote the book, the book is called Data Teams, a unified model for managing teams. And what I say there is, most of the time management has gotten this message loud and clear that data science, data science, data science. And so they think just hire a data scientist and everything's good. In the book, I try to say, no, you actually need 3 teams to do this right. You do need the data science, yes, but you also need data engineering and operations. And I try to make that clear in there of what is data science, what is data engineering, and what is operations. And then I go a step further. I didn't want a book that was theoretical, although it comes from my experience consulting with companies. I did case studies. I did several case studies of companies who actually do this on a day-to-day basis. And I asked them over a 10-year period, what does this look like? Is that body of work did not exist anywhere?
Okay, interesting stuff. You know, and all the companies I'm speaking with, I think that's some good advice that a lot of people need to hear. So we'll try and get a link and plug that. So
There was one part that I forgot to
yes, please.
say, and it's I wrote part specifically for professionals like yourselves, HR people, because there was a missing part that spoke to HR and said, this is what this person should be, this is what this job description should be, and this is how much you should be paying them, because this is all what was missing. When we work with companies, the HR department would say, but I should be paying this data engineer 40,000, let's say, US. That's never going to happen.
No.
And so the HR people didn't understand, oh, data engineer means this and this and this, and it's actually a specialization of software engineering. So I put that in print so that a manager could say, here, HR, here's what it says. We have it in print. Please listen.
Important stuff. I mean, there's new roles, new jobs, new functions coming online more and more. How many times have we heard data is the new oil? We've heard that a lot. Algorithms are the new oil, or the algorithms are the new data. So, the phrase I've heard before. But no, I appreciate your time and coming in. Just so people who've heard this and are kind of interested, who should call you? Who's your target about who you're trying to reach for your company?
We're looking for two types of people. People who are running a project right now and they're stuck and they don't know why. This is exactly what we do. We have the experience to come in, figure out what's going on and fix it. And then other people who hear about these problems and say, I don't want that problem. And they're starting that team and they want to start it right. I want to talk to those two people.
Sounds like a good
And
idea.
You can reach us at bigdatainstitute.io.
Okay, and we'll definitely have a link in everywhere that we share this. All right, Jesse, thanks for your time. I appreciate it.
Thank you so much.